Well, this morning I have asked my friend Chris to come and read the reading for us. So Chris and Lizzie are two people who are new to our church. They've actually moved into our house as lodgers. And so that means I can ask them to do lots of things. And the first thing that I've asked them to do is do the reading this morning. So Chris is very kindly going to do the reading this morning. So Chris, over to you to share God's word.
The reading this morning is the parable of the rich fool in Luke chapter 12, verse 13 to 21. That's Luke chapter 12, starting at verse 13. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." And then he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God." Amen.
Thanks, Chris. This is not part of the sermon. I'm nervous because I've already got words wrong, and so you may get the start of one sermon and the end of a different one. I'm just going to forewarn you, okay? But where I was planning on starting was nothing to do with the Bible. Who likes TV quiz shows? Yeah, and more like The Chase and things like that. How many know that there's one that was sort of one of the biggest? It was a phenomenon. It started in 1998. It only lasted for 13 years, but they did 30 series of it, which is almost like non-stop, almost unheard of. It spread around the world, and then it stopped in 2011. But it's just been restarted in the last couple of years, and Jeremy Clarkson is part of it. So do you know what that is? It's who wants to know? You know that, don't you? Yeah. They ask you questions, and then they give four multiple choice, and then you have 3 lifelines. Although I think they've changed it a little bit now. But one is it's 50-50, ask the audience, and phone a friend. Have they changed it, or is it still those? Everyone says it's one, apart from one person said it's changed. So that depends which TV you watch. But do you know? But that little thing about phone a friend, that phone a friend option has become part of our psyche. Kathy and I were at a shop yesterday, and we are umming and erring over whether we bought something, and the guy actually says, "Do you want to phone a friend?" He actually said that, and he didn't even know what I was preaching on, and he said that, and I've got it. Have you ever said, "Can I phone a friend?" Yeah. How about when it comes to like tough things and with God? Can I phone God? Have you ever done that? Because our series in the morning sort of looks at that a little bit, because what we've been doing is a series called Jesus Steps In. Now, throughout the Gospels, we find that Jesus steps into situations and people's lives, and when he steps in, he brings truth and transformation. Jesus just brings something that totally transforms people's lives. And we've looked at specific things like around healing or around doubt. Last week we looked around prayer and how we saw when Jesus steps in, he doesn't always just fix it. He brings transformation. He wants us to see differently. And we've looked through quite a few, and we've got a few more to come. But if you've missed any, catch up on YouTube or our podcast. They're really worth just listening and thinking through those. Now, this morning we're focusing on a subject which actually Jesus taught more about than he did prayer. So last week we looked at prayer, but this subject we're looking at today, this area where Jesus steps in, he taught more about this than prayer. In fact, almost about 2/3 of his parables were about this subject. Jesus taught loads about it, and the subject is Jesus steps into money and stuff. How many here have ever had an issue with money or stuff, and you said, Jesus, can you step in and sort this out? Have you ever done that? Yeah, I think most of us have done that. And I want us to look at how Jesus responded to that call and what Jesus says, so that we can learn some truth, but so also we can be opened up to this transforming power of God when it comes around the area of money, finances, and stuff. Now, our reading that Chris read just a few moments ago will be familiar to some, and not to others, but the scene where two men were basically fighting over an inheritance. We don't know the details, but we know that obviously one was feeling there was an injustice happening, it's not fair, it needs to be sorted out, and this never happens with money, does it? That people say it's not fair. Well, they were there, and they turned to Jesus and say, Jesus, will you step in and tell my brother to sort this out? Okay? So we will understand now, you may not have the issue over an inheritance and fighting over inheritance. Yours may be much more mundane. But we all have our different things when it comes to money and stuff. And we can understand that feeling of wanting Jesus to step in and sort it out. But I want us to just walk through this passage a little bit. Because you have your Bibles opened or turned on. Check out verse 14. Look how Jesus responded. It's really interesting. He says, man, who appointed me judge or arbitrator between you? Okay, now that's a strange question because, okay, just put a pause on that. Just a few verses earlier, Jesus said that we all are going to face judgment, that there's going to be a judge above us. In Philippians, it says that Jesus has the name above all other names, and he is above all things, and we're going to have to give account to him. So by his very nature, he is judge. Is that fair? Okay. So why did Jesus say, who appointed me? Why did he say that? Because I think the reason is we can often focus on the wrong word. It's not the judge or arbitrator. It's the little phrase, between you. That's what we need to focus on. Jesus is going, who should be judge between you? Because what happened here is one of these guys, or both of these guys, fell into the mindset that we can so easily find ourselves into, is that we get through life, we hit a problem, and then we go, I need someone to help sort this out, and my ultimate phone a friend is Jesus. Jesus, can you come in and sort out this problem? And Jesus going, whoa, dude, you're mixing me up here. See, God is God over everything, not the God just to set our disputes. He's not God just to sort out our problem. He's not the ultimate judge, the ultimate referee, the ultimate person to say fair play. What he is he's God over all. What happened is in this man's view, is from God who is above all to a God, can you sort out this financial mess of mine? He almost downgraded God. And what Jesus is saying is, wait, whoa. You're downgrading your view of who God is. And it's such an easy thing to do, especially over money. Now, why especially over money? One thing Jesus said in Matthew 6:24, he says, you cannot serve both God and money. You'll love the one and hate the other. Or you'll love one and you'll despise the other. You can't serve them both. Now, Jesus is saying that the number one challenger to your devotion, to my devotion to God, is actually money and stuff. That's what it is. The number one competitor is money. The one thing that's going to grab your heart, grab your attention, grab your hope, where you hope in what you're concerned about, where you think will sort everything out, is either in God or money. And it's so easy to shift it from God, I follow you, and God, will you sort things, and God, I'm joining you, to money. Money was sorted. If I had enough, then my life would be different. If my brother shared the inheritance, life would be different. And our hope goes in money. Jesus is saying, what you need to understand is God isn't one who just sorts out financial. He's not the supernatural financial advisor. What he is he's God over all. And this man, these guys, they downgraded God from God over all to a God who sorts things out. That's why he said in verse 14, because God is saying this is actually a heart issue. Verse 15, he says to guard yourselves against greed. Guard your hearts against greed. Now, let's talk about greed a little bit. Who is going to just admit they're greedy? Any greedy people here? How many greedy? Oh, we got some yeses here. We got some. That's well, this is a safe place. Well, it was, and they just want lots of cake afterwards. Some are greedy. Most of us would be saying, well, I don't think I'm greedy. I mean, okay. Let me rephrase this. How many of you know a greedy person? Yeah. I mean, they're easy to spot, aren't they? I mean, they're just greedy. Apart from, actually, greed isn't always easy to spot. Because someone will say, because you have someone who just seems to be getting tons and tons of stuff and they're rich and all this, and you're going, no, they're just greedy, it's all about them. And then you suddenly find this little secret that, do you know that they give away thousands and thousands and thousands? So this person who looks like they got everything and yet they give away hundreds of thousands, maybe millions they give away, they just don't tell you about it. Does that change if they're greedy or not? That's interesting, isn't it? And then how about greed? Let's get really personal, okay? I need you, okay. Get ready for this. You're going to judge me here, okay? Tell me if I'm greedy, okay? I have a second dessert. Is that greedy? Wow, you're harsh, aren't you? Blimey. Okay, okay. Okay, how about this? We just bought a new car. Is that greedy? Oh, no. Ferrari, we're here. Yes! It depends on what car I get, does it? And it depends on why. What happens if my last car just blew up and we had to buy a new car? Or I just fancy the latest model. I want the latest things. Because greed is hard, isn't it? I got the latest bit of tech, an Apple tech. Is that good or is that greedy or not? Yeah. See, now if we flipped it around and I get to judge you now, okay? Just in light of what you did to me. But have you noticed that we're all very good at justifying ourselves, aren't we? Because when I said, are you really greedy before God? You're saying, no, I needed that. I'm worth it. If you, is that Garnier, whatever it is? Because advertisers know that. Advertisers are saying, but what happens is we are so good at justifying, you need that latest this. You need a bigger car. You need this latest gadget. You need the next handbag. I'm not looking in that corner. You need shoes. You need this. And then we're saying, yeah, but I've had a hard week, month, year. It's because it's been really tough. And we justify ourselves in this. Now, Jesus says, guard against, I love this, all kinds of greed. In other words, there are different kinds of greed. Did you know that? Is what you're greedy for, I may not be greedy for, but we're still both falling into that greed. What is greed? Greed is basically when it's all for your consumption. It's all about me. Jesus told the story of the rich farmer who did more and more. Did you notice? I think verse 17, he talks about my crops, about my barn, about my grain. Sorry, not a migraine, my grain. And he talks about my. And this is the thing. The reason why God says the biggest competitor about worship to God is money is because money so easily grabs our heart, our attention. It steals our sleep. It steals our hope. And what we can find ourselves doing is we're challenging the greatest commandment. The greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Put your hope in him. And what greed does is it moves it to stuff. If I have enough stuff, then I'll be happy. So often when it comes to our financial challenges and we ask God to come in, step in, that's not necessarily because with God it's all about you. It's because, God, I need more stuff. I need my money. I need that sorted out. And God doesn't actually tell, notice, God isn't telling those two chaps, you are greedy. He did not say that. He said, guard against greed. We need to just guard our hearts. How do you guard against greed? How do you know before God, are you really a greedy person or not? And I want to give you a couple of little sort of indicators to check this, okay? Really helpful. I want to be really practical. Okay, there's two things that you can do to guard your heart, to obey what Jesus just said. The first thing is watch what you're focused on. Okay, watch what you're focused on. How we do that is, what do you talk about the most? What do you pray about the most? If it's about me and my stuff, that I can get this and I can get that, and it's very me-centric or you-centric, we need to remember in the Lord's Prayer, it's your kingdom come, your will be done. When it's me-centric, it's my kingdom, it's my stuff, it's my rule, my preference, my. And that's what my barn, my grain, my fields, my money. And what Jesus calls us is your kingdom come. So one of the ways that we check ourselves is saying, where is my focus? Now, please hear me really, really clearly. This is not saying if as soon as you say the word my or you pray for your situation that you're greedy. It's not saying that. What it is to be aware. To go, if I am actually prioritizing myself above everything, if all my prayers are around me and my stuff, my things, it's a little alarm bell, a little flag waving that says, ooh, am I making it more about my kingdom than God's kingdom? Jesus is not here to burden and condemn. Jesus says, I want you to know life. He says in John, I've come to give life in all its fullness. And part of that is to be freed from trying to put our hope into this false god of money and putting it in the true God of God. And we just need to keep checking ourselves. What is my focus? Maybe some of your loved ones, you can ask them, do I talk a lot about money? Is it all about me? It just is a little flag that waves. So check that. It doesn't mean you're greedy. What it means is, I need to be aware that I'm on a path that maybe is not going to lead in a good way. So one is to keep a focus on, have a look at what you're focusing on. The second one is this, is look at where you're spending your money. Now, there's a way of doing this, is a word called budget, is have a budget. What a budget does, it says how much money is going on this, that, and the other. And if you go, I don't do a budget, then how do you know you're not following money? Because you don't. What a budget does is actually looks, where are you spending your money? Where are you allocating? And it's a really important thing to do because when you write a budget out, it actually focuses and you can see what you are prioritizing, because budgets do. Now I know some people get nervous about this because you're going, I'm spending too much on this and not on the other. But actually, it helps us to come in and not be the master, not be mastered by our money, but to make sure that God is. We've taught our girls this when they went to university, is put a budget together so that you know what you're spending and where you're spending and how you're spending. I remember a few years ago, a couple, very, very godly couple. He was a minister of a church, so he must be fairly godly. And they were just going, our finances, we're just, our month is too long for our finances, and we're really struggling with this. And I'm saying to them, well, what's your budget like, guys? Have you got a budget you follow? And they all said, we haven't got a budget. And I went, well, that's okay, let's do that. Would you let me to step in and help put a budget together with you? And they said, yeah, okay. And we went in and we saw the numbers. And within about 5 minutes, I worked out if they bought an alarm clock, they could probably save £200 a month. Okay, let me tell you why. And that sounds, but I'll tell you why, and you'll go, I totally get it. Is I looked at what they're spending on, and what happened is they were getting up not in time to make their kids pack lunch, so that they were then having to give their kids dinner money. So every day they did it, whether they wanted it or not, they're giving the kids dinner money because they weren't making their packed lunch. And also, sometimes they overslept, and the kids missed the school bus, so they're sending them on a taxi to school. Ouch. And it worked out about 200, sometimes more, sometimes about 200 quid a month. And I said, get an alarm clock, guys, and you've just saved, and it wasn't that they're greedy. This wasn't, maybe greedy for sleep, maybe. Yeah, that's an arguable one. It's not that they're greedy, it's just that they just needed to basically guard their heart against greed. And part of that is, look at where you spend your money. Now, that may not apply to you, but some of you have a secret addiction to Kit Kats. You know who you are, I'm not going to name you, okay? And the truth is, you know that, but how much a month do you spend on Kit Kats? I don't know, you're in denial. And I'm not saying Kit Kats are wrong, okay? I'm not saying they're wrong, but if you don't know how much you're spending on Kit Kats, how do you know if you are prioritizing them above everything else? At least buy a multi-pack and save money that way. I don't know. But what a budget does is a budget just looks at where you're spending money. Because if this Kit Kat is you, I don't know who it is, I won't name him. And if you're suddenly thinking, I'm spending 50 quid a month on chocolates. Now you may go, no, that's a good investment. Now you might do, that's okay. Because what a budget does, it just shows your priorities. If you don't have a budget, you don't know. You don't know if you're honoring God. You don't know if you're just running around things. And I also know, the financial pressure on people now. I know it's huge. Utility bills go up. I know there's a lot of pressure. And many of us are going, we're just trying to stay above water. A budget helps clarify why we feel we're drowning. A budget helps clarify that. Now you may say, is this godly? It's 2/3 of Jesus' parables were about money. Jesus wants to talk about this because he says the biggest competitor for our devotion is money or a lack of money. And putting a budget. If you are going, I need help with that, or I'm beyond help, Mark, I am in massive debt and I'm in trouble. We are just beginning a partnership there's a great charity called Christians Against Poverty, CAP. And Christ Church Down End, they have a CAP center, and we're partnering with them a little bit. And we'd love to signpost you. They will help you. We're trying to get some training courses on how to do budgets and things like that. Or if you've gone so far, you're just in crazy debt, that they can actually help you to try to navigate out. I want to encourage you, if you're in that red zone, please speak to us and we'll give you some signposts. But actually, all of us, Jesus is saying, is we need to guard against greed. And that's watch what you're focusing on and watch where you spend your money, because then we can actually show what our priority is. Now, Jesus then goes on. Jesus doesn't just say that. He then tells this story of a rich man who basically got a lot richer and built bigger barns. And then verse 21, pull up verse 21, and he says you're going to die and you're going to lose everything. But he calls us to be generous towards God. Be generous towards God. So one of the ways of how you guard our heart is to look at what you focus on and to check your budget. But here's a really key thing. This is, I reckon, is the antidote to greed. It's called generosity. Okay, it's the antidote. Okay, anyone afraid of heights? Okay, there's a few of you. Okay, imagine, these big hotels that have glass lifts? Imagine we're in the glass lift and I am the power of the button and we're there and I press floor 97. Okay, and we are whizzing up at 1,000 miles an hour, and your fear is probably going. Your fear is going up, and you're looking out, and you're facing the wrong way, and behind you is this doom of death of falling, and fear rises. Can you? Those who actually gets that feeling, how many can appreciate those who are not sort of like heights very much? Okay. Now, what I could do is I could cut back. I could be less extravagant, and I go, all right, I've got compassion and mercy. Floor 65. Does that get away your fear? If I press basement, would that help you a little bit? So when it comes to greed, the opposite of greed is generosity. It's actually going the complete opposite. Some of us do need to cut back. When you do budgets, you may go, I just need to cut back and understand that's true and that's fine and probably needs to be done. But actually, it's generosity is a key thing. Jesus said, it is actually blessed is the one who's generous towards God. And some of you are going to go, well, yeah, but I don't have enough money to be generous. Generosity has nothing to do with your bank balance or possessions. It's a heart issue. Some of the most generous people I know are actually some of the poorest people I know, to my shame. It's about an attitude of heart. It's saying, God, I want my heart to be open to you. I want to be generous towards you, God, and to be generous with my money. I remember I was preaching on this a while back at a church. And on the door, as I do the handshake, which I'll be there as well, one guy said to me, Mark, no, I get that. He said, but I'm generous towards God with my time. That's what I am. And I said, that's brilliant. That's fantastic. It's really good. I said, well, how about also with your money? Do you give regularly and proportionately to God? No, Mark, you don't understand. It's about, I give time. I'm generous with time. And I said, no, that's brilliant. But what about with your money? No, Mark, it's not about money. It's about time. I'm generous towards God. And I said, well, I think it's about money. No, Mark, it's not about money. I sensed in my spiritual thing, it might be about money, don't you think? Because what we can do is we can bargain with God. We can say, I'm going to be generous with this, but the money is mine. I'll be generous with this, and this, but the tech stuff, the things are mine. Remember, guard against all kinds of greed. It's stuff. Because Jesus says in our reading, it's those who basically put their hope in their possessions need to be careful here. We need to be generous, because generosity. Now, how generous are you supposed to be? It's between you and God. It's a heart thing. But what Jesus says is when it comes to money, when you're going to phone your friend and say, Jesus, I'm in this financial problem, help me. And Jesus says, well, are you guarding yourself against greed? And said, are you generous? And then there's a really cool thing. It's not in this reading, but it's definitely biblical, and you'll hear in a second. It is, actually, no, it's implied in our reading, but it's this. It's something that, actually, have a look in your reading. I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to show you something really important. If you have your Bibles, check it out. Jesus tells this parable of a rich man whose crops grew bigger, and he got a bigger barn, and then he died, okay? So tell me, does it say that he should not have built a bigger barn? It doesn't, does it? Isn't that interesting? Jesus is not telling you off for having stuff. He's saying, be generous. This is really important, is be generous. Whether you got loads of stuff or little stuff, it's not about don't have stuff. Because actually the Bible says something interesting about stuff. Just a few verses earlier in Luke 6, Jesus says, give and it will be given to you. In fact, the scoop that you use will be used with you, pressed down and compact, and God will use that. So however generous you are towards God, God will be generous towards you. So here's a little moment of honesty here. The scoop size that you use in your generosity towards God, if God was to use that scoop size on you, how are you feeling now? It's interesting, isn't it? Because we know God's generous, God's this, but I'm not. And Jesus says in John 6:36, he said very clearly, he says, the scoop you use will be used on you. In Malachi chapter 3, this is the only place that God says to test me, by the way. He said, bring the full tithe, the full offering into my house, and see if I will not unbolt the floodgates of heaven and bless you. This is not give God a tenner and you're going to get 100 quid back. That's not that. What it is God says, if you're generous towards me, basically you release God's generosity on you. So let's come back to this Jesus steps in. When Jesus steps into money, I think so many of us, including me, have phoned a friend. God, will you help us? God, we're in trouble. God, I don't know. God, I can't see. And God says, okay, Mark, okay. Guard against greed and be generous towards God. And it will all sort out. If you read the verses straight after Luke 12:21, he talks about, and don't worry. Don't worry about what you're going to eat, what you're going to feed, what you're going to wear. He goes straight after. It says, Jesus, if you read, I think, verse 22, which went beyond what Chris, he says about generous towards God, and then he goes, therefore, do not worry. When you come across a therefore, you need to ask, why is it there? And it's there because be generous towards God. Why? Because then you won't need to worry. Because God is God. Money is not God. God is personal. God loves you. God changes things. God steps in to transform things. Money doesn't. Despite what we're told all around us, money does not transform things. Jesus does. So my prayer is wherever your financial thing is, if you are an extreme end, please ask. We will signpost you and try to help you. But whatever we are, whenever we come to that prayer and say, Jesus, will you step in? Jesus says, okay, be generous towards God. Guard against greed. And you'll see my kingdom come.